everyone. I am super excited to be here again for an office hour for Social Media Pulse community. And I am thrilled to present this particular topic today because it is easily one of the biggest movers in terms of how successful you are as a social media manager. And I know a lot of you have already got this all dialed in and figured out, and you don't need any pricing information, but I do know that there are a lot of people who've not figured this out yet. And so today will be that day where you learn how to price your services as a social media manager. And I have some super cool tools for you and lots of things to talk about. But just so you know, all the conversation about this we will do on the social sites where you're seeing this right now, but we will also do it inside the Social Media Pulse community. And that's where all the conversation and questions and answers will happen today. All right. Now, also, you should know that everything that you see today can be yours to use. Just come on over to the socialmediapulse.community, socialmediapulse.community, and find this conversation in there, and they'll all be there for you. All right, so now I'm just going to jump into this thing because there's a lot to present today. And if you're watching this as a replay, you're welcome to ask questions in here. We are monitoring all the places. All right, let's get this started. Now, how much to charge has always been the biggest question inside of social media manager communities. And it seems like the weirdest question to ask because everybody has a different answer. So what I'm going to show you today is how to very mathematically figure out your pricing for all the services that you provide. And I know that's a big goal, but I think by the end of this, you'll realize how easy this is and how easy it is to set up your pricing. So I just want to get into it. So let's go. So there are 4 different types of fees or rates you need to know as a social media manager. You need to know your consulting rate. Whether or not you think you are a consultant, you need to determine your consulting rate. Also, you need to know your hourly task rate, even though I advise never, ever to actually use this number publicly or with your clients. But you need to know what it is so that you can figure out your project rate and your monthly retainer fee. Okay, so the consulting rate, whether or not you think you're a consultant, your task rate, which is an internal number that you need to know, and then your project rate and your retainer fee, which are both the ones that you would be sending to potential clients. Okay, so those are the 4. Now, to determine these 4 things, we have all these super cool things for you. We have a pricing formulas guide. Now, there are 2 tracks to figuring out your fees. One is sort of a DIY, do the math yourself type of thing, and the other one is to use a calculator. I am team calculator, which you'll see why in a few minutes. But if you love math and you love formulas and you like to write this stuff down yourself, then the manual way of finding out your fees is also available. And this pricing formula guide will show you those 4 formulas. And these are the first 2 pages of that guide, and it goes into greater detail about all of these things. The other thing that we have for you is this calculator. And my hope is by the end of this training, you will love this calculator as much as I do. And I want to tell you straight up that this calculator was developed probably almost a decade ago by a long-time member of Social Media Manager School and now the Social Media Pulse community. And her name is Tracy Rayteri. And Tracy took all the things we were talking about and turned it into this amazing calculator. And I say amazing, as you'll see in a minute, but also because she lets us use this for so long for free. It's just such a wonderful thing. And she is a master of systems. So go check her out. I'll make sure I'll link her in all the places. So we have this calculator, which we'll be using today, and we also have a pricing worksheet in case you need to really sit down and figure some things out. Long form, we have this for you too. All right, so let's start at the very beginning. We're going to start with figuring out your consulting rate and your task rate sort of at the same time, but we're going to do it. I'm going to show you 2 ways to get there. And the way we're going to do there is first I'm going to show you the manual formula way to do it, and then we're going to head over to the calculator. A lot of social media managers forget, especially if they're a home business, that they need to consider these things in developing their fee schedule, their overhead, their expenses, the taxes they're going to have to pay, all the apps and tools and fees and hardware and conferences and education. All of those things actually inform how you come up with your fee. You also will need to consider the time that you have for marketing and administration, because a lot of times your billable hours to a client is only about 50% of the available time in a work week. And it might be more or less than that, and I'll show you that in the calculator. You also need to consider other sources. Are you doing training? Are you selling e-commerce projects? All of these things are things to consider before actually jumping into determining your fees. Now, start with the end in mind. You need to know how much you would like to make in a year from this business of yours. And so remembering that expenses and taxes are going to take anywhere from 30 to 50% of your income. And that's just a hard truth. You know, when you bill a client for $1,000, you think, yay, $1,000, but no, it's not. For example, if you want to earn $50,000 net, plan on targeting between $72,000 and $100,000 in income. Just get that in your body so that you understand that process before you get started with figuring out your fees. Now, billable hours in a week. In a traditional work week, you've got that 40 hours, and you can probably fit about 20 hours of billable work in this. But seriously, people who work at home, how many hours do you actually work in a week? If you have young children at home, this number is probably way less than that. If you are single in a house by yourself with no children, unless the grandkids are visiting, then grandparents too, actually, but that number might be much bigger, and maybe you don't mind working more hours. So that's a very individual thing you need to know for yourself. So here's the long form math formulas. Now, if your head spins when you see actual math formulas, just hang in there, because I have the calculator coming up that will do all of this work for you. But the way you figure out your consulting rate, which, like I said, even if you don't consider yourself a consultant, you need to know this rate, is you start out with that salary you want to make, factoring all those expenses, that net you want to make, and you divide it by the number of weeks you have available each year, because you know there are holidays, times the number of billable hours that you have in a week. And remember, that's not all the hours that you work, it's only the billable hours that you're working. And this will equal your hourly consulting rate. Now, for example, if you want to bring in $75,000 net, you only worked 48 hours a week and you only have 20 billable hours each week, then if every single one of those billable hours was a consulting rate, you would be charging $78 per hour for consulting. Now, this is actually very low for consulting, and I'll show you why in just a minute. But that's how you would do it, long form, DIY, on a piece of paper. Now, let's go to the calculator, shall we? Because I truly think the calculator is a much better way of doing this. So I'm going to go over to the calculator. Here we are. Now, I, at first, was very confused about spreadsheets, but now I understand this. So spend time with this particular thing, because the more you play with it, the more you'll understand it. Now, there are several sections in this, and I want to go through it so you know what the sections are. You have this goals section. You have some expenses section, which includes all your expenses in your business. Then you have the retainer calculator, and this is also the project calculator down here. Now, to get to this bottom piece here, to figure out how much you charge for your projects, you have to fill out all of this stuff all the way from the top. So let's go through it. Anything in green is something that you can edit. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So let's say, for example, I want to make $80,000 yearly net. Okay, as soon as I change this number here, lots of different things change. Now, let's also say that I want to take, instead of 10 days off a year for what we would call a leave day, let's say if I want to take 20 of those. Watch things change as soon as I change this. All the numbers will change, but let's just go through it. Let's say I get sick 10 times a year. I don't, but let's just say. And let's just say that there are more than 5 holidays in a year. Let's just say there are 10 holidays in a year, right? So now there are 40 days per year that I am not working, that there is nothing there I can bill for. Now let's go over to this section, and let's say on Mondays, I only have 7 hours in a day that I can work. And then let's say on Tuesday, I only have 7 hours in a day that I can work. But let's just say on Wednesday, I have 5 hours because of kids. And then Thursday and Friday, I only have 4. Now notice that I only have 27 hours in a week that I can work. But also notice that in most businesses, you can't, it's just literally impossible to bill for all the hours that you're working, because you have marketing that you're doing for yourself, you have accounting that's not billable to anybody, you have things you have to test out which are not billable to anybody. So generally speaking, that's about 50% of your week if you think about it. But again, you can change this. So let's say for my situation, there's 40% of the time I can't bill because I'm doing stuff, business administration. So let's look at this. I want to make a net $80,000 in a year. I have 40 hours, 40 days a year I can't work. These are the only hours I can work. This is billable hours a week is 16 billable hours per week. And so that means if I have 752 hours per year that's billable. Awesome. That's good to know. But how does that change my rate? You'll notice in this next section here, you have to put in your taxes. This is super important, you guys. If you don't account for your taxes, you will find that what you think you're making in a year is not anywhere close to what you're making in a year. So go ahead and figure out Social Security. If you're a freelancer and working for yourself, you know you have to account for this, and it will calculate right here how much of your income is going to go towards taxes if you're hoping to net this. Because in order to net $80,000, look over here, you need to make at least $103,000 per year. Okay. Also note that because of all this work we just did, it tells you exactly what your minimum hourly rate should be. And in this case, it's $137.79. Now, consulting buffer. For every year that you are in business, you can raise your consulting buffer. I'm going to start it at 35% more than your hourly rate, which would make your consulting rate $186 per hour. This consulting rate, like I said before, even if you don't consider yourself a consultant, comes into play when getting your fee for projects and retainers. So let's get into that. So here we are. If you feel really good with this bit, then go down and fill out your expenses. And for some social media managers who are just starting, a lot of this you don't know yet, but go ahead and estimate what things are going to be. For example, your internet, like I know my internet is $75 a month monthly. This is a given. I know that my phone costs me $150 a month. My office supplies, I spend like nothing. If monthly, $20, that's a lot, actually. My marketing budget, because I'm not running any ads for myself at the moment, that's low. But let's say I am, and let's say I'm spending $120 a month for marketing for my own business. Notice when I change this now, it will change how much it is per year. Now, some things, as you know, you pay for yearly. It's not something you pay monthly or weekly. And so for those things, like your domain name, your hosting, if you're paying for cloud storage, all these things, you have an email provider and you pay yearly on that. So let's say your email provider is, maybe you've got a pretty good size email list, but you're paying $50 a month for that. Then what happens is it shows up at $600 a year for that. So after going through all of these things, at the bottom of this, you will have your yearly expenses for your business. Now, the nice thing about that is being involved in the social media Pulse community is zero. So if you have training courses that you're paying for, maybe you just decide to do things inside of the community. And so you can just delete that. And then boom, it's gone and your expenses per year go down. When your expenses per year go down, it changes your minimum hourly rate and your consulting rate. So for example, let's keep your eye on these two numbers right here. And let's increase something over here that we pay a lot for. Let's say rent. So I don't pay rent, but maybe you do. And maybe monthly you have to pay $300 a month to have a space to work in. So once you do that, that's how much it is. And notice how the consulting rate went up and the minimally hour rate went up. So do you get that? That's the dynamic nature of this calculator. Depending on your expenses, that will determine your hourly and your consulting rate. All right, so I want to go back over here real quick and say hi to everybody. And thank you, Oscar. That's very sweet of you. And this will change your life as a social media manager if you still need to figure out pricing. I want to go back over to the slides for just a moment. Yes, and exactly. So you can put everything in there. Like, for example, I have a home office, so I get to write off a certain amount of my mortgage every month for my home office. So if you have that number, you put it in there. Like, you spend a lot of time in that section and make sure you capture everything that you can for those expenses and put everything in there. And if you want to change out some of these lines, again, that part you can change out and then it'll still calculate it for you correctly. Exactly. So here we are back in the slides, and I just introduced this calculator and how it works. I do want to give you a little bit of advice about this as you're playing with the numbers, and then make sure that no matter what you do, that consulting rate is not lower than $75 an hour. And that's really just for somebody who's just starting out. If you've been doing this for many years, that number would be way higher. Remember how I said that that percentage of consulting buffer, I showed it at 35%. Well, for me, being in this industry for over 10, 11, how many years? 12? many, many years. I can increase that buffer. I could put 200% there, and that would be my consulting rate per hour. And I'll show you that when we go back, just so you have a little vision of possibilities there. And then also consider local pricing thresholds. You might do this whole thing and come up with a number and you think, well, actually, this is a great number, but I might need to modify this for my particular local community. So that's something you might need to consider. But don't discount the consulting fee, okay? If you have to discount something, make it be the implementing fee, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And then also remember to value what you're delivering and see the value in the fee matching the value of what you deliver. And then also something I always have to remind people is that consulting is not implementing. Consulting is a public-facing, on-screen or in-person or high-level development of marketing plans and things like that. Whereas implementing, you can do on the sofa in your pajamas. So it's a completely different thing. Two different things here, right? All right. All right, so we figured out that hourly task rate by filling in all those things in there. And I just want to remember that this is one of the 4 rates. We figured out the hourly consulting and the hourly task rate. So, and remember, you have to start at that calculator to really make this easy. Okay, so we're going to go back to the calculator because I want to get to the project rate and the retainer fee, because these are 2 very, very good, important things for you to know. And I am going to put the calculator back up. All right, so here we are. So we've filled out the top. We've filled out the, oops, I need to make this a little bit better here. There we go. So we filled out the goals. We know how much we want to make. We figured out how many hours we have available, how much of those are billable. And then I figured out my taxes, and that gave me how much to charge for my hourly rate and how much to charge for my consulting. I promised I would go over here, and if I'm going to change this to 200%, all right? And so notice what happens next to my consulting rate. I'm now charging $430 an hour for consulting, which is actually pretty much where it is right now. But again, if you're just starting out, please don't do 200 unless you feel very confident that you know what you're talking about. So let's move this back over and let's just make it 50% for this one. And that, oh, not 500, sorry, 50. That would be a lot. That's better. So now your hourly rate for implementing is $143 and your consulting is $215. All right, now all the way down to the bottom for this section here. And this is actually, it's a retainer and it's also for projects, depending on what you put in this next section. So you'll notice that it pulled in those numbers from up top and they've put it here, your project rate and your consulting rate. Now this is where you designate all the things that you are going to do for a client. All of this is customizable. You can change all of these things out. This section in the purple is just notes to yourself, whereas the minutes per month of doing the thing is the driver for the calculator. So I know it's hard to think about minutes for doing things. That's why we have that other guide here where you can figure out how long it takes you to do something. Because if part of your thing is, well, I have to create 10 tweets a day and I have to do this and that and I have to look at things, you have to time yourself sometimes to figure out how long it takes you to do a thing. And sometimes you can just time yourself. Let's say, for example, you're actually going to do 10 tweets a day, but you're going to do that every single day. So that's 300 tweets. So you don't want to time yourself creating 300 tweets. You want to time yourself doing 10 and then times it by however many days you're doing it. Okay. But you might have to take a minute to time yourself to understand how long it takes you to do something. I remember when I first started in social media marketing, and I was working with a blogger and coming up with a blog post, I would think, oh, yeah, I can do this in an hour. Well, no, it takes a lot longer than an hour. And I learned that the hard way because I was undercharging for my services. So take the time to time yourself to know how long it takes you to do a thing, knowing that you'll get quicker through time. But definitely in the beginning, you have to time yourself so that you know. All right, so go ahead and go through this particular worksheet to figure out how long it takes you to do a thing, because this is where you're going to put it, is in the calculator. So I'm just going to show an example here, and then you get to play with this. Now, also, I forgot to tell you that when you first get this calculator, you need to make a copy. Those of you who understand how Google things work, you go up to File, and you make a copy, and then that's the one that you play with, right? So you understand all of that. But back to this. All right, so let's say, for example, I am writing 4 blogs a month, but it takes me 4 hours to source the content. 4 hours, okay? That's 240 minutes. And someone needs to check my math, because math is not my thing. That's why I love the calculator. So it's 4 hours a month. It'll do that calculation for you, and it will times it by your implementing rate, and it'll say, okay, so just sourcing content for your client costs them $574. Now, remember in the very beginning I said the implementing rate is nothing. We never show this to a client. You can show them what you're doing, so the things inside this purple thing, but please do not show them the minutes, the hours, or the rate per hour. You can show them the total, but not the math, because that's not their business, and your business is this in the purple section here. All right, so 4 articles. Maybe I'm not doing any video creation, but maybe I am. So let's say I do 1 video a month, and it takes me, again, it might take me 4 hours, oh my gosh, to do a video, but maybe it only takes me 2. So for here, I think I'll just put 120 minutes. Notice it'll go over to 2 hours at my implementing rate, and that's how much they would charge. I would charge them. Let's say community posting for Facebook, that I'm putting in 30 posts and 30 images, and it takes me 300 minutes per month to do that. Notice that's 5 hours a month. Maybe it's actually double that. Maybe it's 10 hours a month. So let's make this 6. That will change it to 10, and that's how much you would charge for all of that. Let's say it's 150 tweets, and it's going to take me 5 hours per month to create all of those. TikTok 10 posts, maybe it only takes me 30 minutes for 2. I think that's crazy. So let's change that one, shall we? Let's say that actually takes us 2 hours a month to create 10 TikTok posts, because we're super good at making TikTok. Maybe it takes you longer than that to do 10 posts. So notice that we say, oh, actually, I can only do about 5 posts at that rate. Now remember, these are your notes. Where it makes the decision is this minutes per month. All right. Instagram, let's say I'm spending about 3 hours in Instagram, a few hours on LinkedIn. Maybe there's 30 minutes of community moderation. Maybe there's 30 minutes of, working on a Twitter list. But let's say there's 5 emails. Now, here's the thing. I don't know anybody who could create 5 emails within 6 minutes. It's just not going to happen. So let's say it takes 30 minutes to do each of those 5 emails. So that's actually 150 minutes, right? Somebody check my math. That makes sense. So now that changes. That's almost 3 hours per month. And then, oh my gosh, if you have to do a report. Now, there's some super interesting things coming up with reports that we're going to be doing in an office hour soon, and it might not take you very long at all. But let's just say it takes about 15 minutes per month because you click a button, boom, all right? And that's all it takes. Then that's how much you charge. Now, notice that this is all the implementing things. Now, let's say your client says, we need to meet face-to-face, either at the local coffee shop or whatever, once a month. Then that's, and it takes 2 hours to do that. Maybe it takes 30 minutes to drive there, 30 minutes to drive back, and an hour in the meeting, which I would never advise to do. But that's 120 minutes, and that's 2 times your consulting rate. And that's how much that costs. Let's say they want to do 3 20-minute calls inside a month. That's how many minutes? That's times your consulting rate. And now the things that you do as a consultant and the things you do as implementing is all contained inside here. And this is how much you should be charging per month. Yes, and Oscar is making some fantastic points here, and I'll just put this one up. Definitely depends on the type of post and the quality. Exactly. So if it takes you 4 hours to create one good TikTok, then put that in there, right? That's how you show your value to yourself, mostly, as you're building out this thing here. And I don't know what I said, but Oscar said that makes sense. Thank you. Whatever it was, I appreciate that very much. So now let's take a deep breath, at least for me, a deep breath, because I just want to impress upon you how valuable this calculator is for you to figure out your fees. And again, so much of this is something that you can play with and figure things out and organize for yourself to figure out what that hourly rate is and what the consulting rate is. And then once you have all of this together, figuring out how much to charge is super easy. It's like very easy to figure out at that point. And like I said earlier, you can change all of these different things over here to whatever it is that you want, as long as you stay within this green section here. So you can add on here. You can see we have a few more lines here that are still part of the dynamic nature of the calculator too. All right, so let's go back to the slides. So that was how to determine your project rate and your retainer fee. Now, the difference between a project and a monthly retainer fee. This is the thing. A project rate is something that you're going to be doing for a very limited amount of time. So for some people, that would be completely doing a refresh of all the social media platform accounts, right? Or taking their YouTube channel and just getting it up to snuff and getting the playlist right and the SEO right and the titles right and the thumbnails right and the playlist done correctly and all of that. That's a project. It has a start and it has a finish, okay? The monthly retainer fee is like that classic social media manager job description where you're creating certain amount of posts and tweets per month on an ongoing basis, right? So all the social media posting and creation that you do for the account. So hopefully that's super clear. And Oscar, if you're still here, that would be nice to know if that was really clear, the difference between a project rate and a monthly retainer fee, and how you can actually build both of them inside of this calculator. So while I just stirred up Oscar there to make a comment, I'm going to keep going through this because I have some extra tips for you too. We determined this, and again, like I said, if calculators are not your thing, you're welcome to use these formulas. Go for it. I mean, this is doable, totally doable if you love formulas. And you can see how I suggested that you write or time yourself for a smaller part of what you would be providing so that you can figure out those minutes in the calculator that I talked about. In this calculator, I hope you love it as much as I do. So we went through all of this, and I also want to remind you that in a retainer, don't forget those communication times. And those are the ones that you are charging with your highest level, your consultant rate, not your implementing, your consultant rate. This is another big topic right here. This calculator will contain what it is that you are providing for your client. And so the interesting thing about client work is that so often the client will be so happy with what you're doing is that it starts to say, well, can you also do this? And can you also add this? And can you maybe not do this, but then do that? You need to be very clear about your boundaries that you have with a client that you've set up in your proposal and your contract, so that when they start to have that creep out of scope of what you've provided for them, that you have a mechanism that puts into play. And it's very easy. You just go back to this calculator, put in the thing that they want you to do, and it will spit out the amount that you will charge extra for that. Super easy to do. Yes. All right. So Oscar is saying, so the retainer fee equals to be available and project is for a project. Yes, exactly. Basically, that's it. That, the project fee is a clear boundary of things that have to happen. Like I mentioned, the updating of the social accounts or building an email system in a new email system, which I'm currently doing for a client, and fixing it all up, getting all the welcome sequence done, the templates, all the things. That's a project. Whereas creating an email to go out once a week for a client is part of a marketing retainer fee, because that's a monthly thing that you're doing. Okay? So that's the difference. Yeah, I know, it's really funny. LinkedIn's fun. I'm glad to see that you're watching over on LinkedIn, though. That makes me very happy. Now, again, I really don't want to go into this because this is all long form and I'm so keen on using the calendar. But inside these slides, we absolutely have a way for you to figure this out manually in case that's your thing. And this is how you would come up with that retainer fee. And it's, for example, if your project rate is $45 and your consultant rate is $120, there's the formula for it. Okay, now, these are just a few extra points at the end here. How are we doing for time? We're doing great for time. So if anybody has any questions, whether you're here live or if you're watching this on replay, I'm happy to answer all the questions. I'm happy to go through anything in the calculator or in all the documents that we have for you. And yes, I just have to say that Oscar understands the things going on. I'm on LinkedIn and YouTube in case LinkedIn decides to skip back 15 minutes. Isn't that just very frustrating? I totally get that. I understand. So handling objections. So let's say you go through this whole process and you've worked out on the calculator your fee for the month for this particular client. Okay. And then they come back and they say, your price is too high. All right. Now, once you've gone through this calculator and you have put all those numbers into place with how much you want to make, how much your time is worth, all your expenses, the number of billable hours you have available for a client, once you have that solid inside, when a client comes back and says your price is too high, it's like it doesn't even affect you. It's like, no, That's actually what my price is. And so if somebody comes back and wants you to discount or telling you someone else is cheaper or any other negotiating tactics, personally, I would say these are my prices. I'm sorry, it doesn't look like we're a fit at this time. And this quote is available to you for the next 60 days. After that, my prices will probably be slightly higher. And I would just go with that. I mean, why not? There are lots of people who need your work. And so don't ever discount like that. Now, if you want to see what other people are charging, you have to do a little research and a little Googling around. But you can. A lot of social media managers do not list their prices because most social media management project fees are custom built, just like I demonstrated today. So you can try and find what other people are charging, and you can ask inside the community what people are charging. But really and truly, to get a clear idea of what you should be charging, is use a calculator. And then raise your prices once a year. So how do you do that? Let's go back to the calculator. So let's say you've had this in play and you've, given this, use this thing at the bottom to create proposals for all your clients for a year. So now you need to go up here to the top again, and you can do two things. The first thing you want to do is you want to relook at these numbers. So maybe this next year you would actually like to make $90,000 in net. Okay. And let's say that you really didn't end up taking 40 days off. So you're just going to you like your work, you want to do more of it. So let's just move that down a little bit. And let's just say that instead of 7 hours, you're only going to work 6. And instead of 7 hours on this day, you're only going to work 6. And go through this, and maybe on Wednesday, you're only going to work 4 hours. And the non-billable hours pretty much stays the same, right? Now, notice that hourly rate just went up a little bit. But also, you've been in business longer, so you can make this 50% for your consulting rate. And now that's your consulting rate. So now when you go down here and do the same amount of work, it's more. You're billing more. And that's how you raise your prices every year. Okay? So, and that's an internal number to you. But the number that you send to the client obviously is higher than it was last year because you made those adjustments. Yes. And Oscar says, can't forget to raise your prices based on inflation. Yeah, so take that 7% increase, right? And then also, he wanted to rephrase this, even though you said it just great before. He says, knowing what your prices are gives you the confidence to reject low offers or know when to walk away. You don't discount yourself automatically. Yes. And unless you have that solid confidence after working these numbers, sometimes it's real easy to kind of cave in and just say, oh, okay, I'll take $1,000 off. Don't ever do that, and never, ever discount your consulting rate. To me, the consulting rate is your value as a consultant, your expertise, your wisdom that you bring to the table. Never, ever discount that. All right, let's see where we are in this. Now, there might be some specialty project pricing things that you might need to put in here. Again, you can put all of these things inside of the section at the bottom that does all the math for you. Just change the name of what it is and put notes in the section that says what it is, and then you can use it for any type of specialty project pricing anytime. All right, that was a run through of how much to charge and an introduction to the formulas and an introduction to the calculator. And I am super happy I got to present this to everyone today. We have, like I said, all of these are available to you inside a Social Media Pulse community. And let's see if I actually have something I can put in here. I can. Here it is. Go to socialmediapulse.community, and this is where you find all the things. Everything in here is free. There's so much training and support and conversation and community with social media managers all over the world inside of here. And you're welcome to join me over there. I'll be answering questions from this presentation inside there and in all the other places. And if there are any other questions, I am happy to answer them. Let's go over to the comments in case there is anything over there. I am happy to answer. And so thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you take this and make your prices solid and great for new clients, and I can't wait to hear your stories. All right, team. Bye.